This story about Zacchaeus, it seems like a simple story. And we know there's, what, over 1 billion Catholics in the world, almost 2 billion Christians. Many people have converted to Jesus. But of the many stories, this one is recorded, and there's a reason for it. You see, Zacchaeus, we know, was a very wealthy man. And we also know he was a tax collector, but it says he was the chief tax collector. And the way it describes what he did, he wanted to see Jesus, and he's the kind of guy that when he decides he wants to get something, he finds a way to do it. And so he is actually a very prominent person, a very successful business person, a very well-connected person, a very powerful person, a very rich person. He's got everything he wants from the world's point of view. And that's kind of the idea of the story. But of all the things he has, and his great power and wealth and his connectedness, and his fame, and people look up to him, he doesn't have what he truly most needs, and that is Jesus. And he recognizes that emptiness. And just like he does for his businesses, he says, I'm going to do whatever it takes to find this Jesus. And so he climbs the tree, and then Jesus simply comes by and looks at him, and he has an encounter with Jesus that is so powerful, beyond words. He comes down and he changes his life. This is the basic story of the gospel. And every person is as valuable in God's eyes as was Zacchaeus. God doesn't care if you're rich and powerful or poor, uneducated. God loves all people. But the world really goes, when they see a rich and powerful person give up all they have to follow Jesus. Today, I'm sharing a little bit about the Franciscan Mission and Franciscan Order. And I'm reminded by the story of Zacchaeus of one of the brothers, Brother George, who entered the order about the same time I did, 1 year later, after I did. About 25 years ago when I entered the order, soon we were joined by Brother George. Brother George was about 50 years old. He was one of the vice presidents at Bank of America. He was a millionaire and worked downtown San Francisco. And he converted and left all his money and his very successful job. He was even married, but then divorced and annulment. Had 2 adopted children and a natural child. And they were grown. And so he left all that and joined our order. And the people at Bank of America, the executives, were so shocked by that change of life that they sent a camera crew to our house. And they filmed about what his new life was like. And they put it in a corporate news program. And I don't think Brother George fully got the idea of this poverty thing, because the very first year, on the guardian's birthday, he took all 12 of us down to the corporate dining room on the downtown San Francisco in a high-rise tower overlooking the city, and we had a fancy meal with all the waiters around. But he was trying to learn, and he was expressing his love in the way he knew how. But the story that Brother George told that really was powerful for me is after about a year being in the order, he had to go back and testify in court about some bank fraud issue that had finally come before the court. And so he went back now as a Franciscan brother and came up to the stand to testify. And the judge and a clerk of the court says, "Tell us your name and your occupation." He says, "I'm Brother George, I'm a Franciscan friar." And they go, "Well, why are you here testifying about bank fraud?" He goes, "Oh, well, I used to work for Bank of America." And the judge becomes intrigued, and he says, "Oh, yeah? Vow of poverty, how much money do you make?" Brother George says, "Well, I make $100 a month." And the judge says, "Well, how much did you used to make?" And he says some outrageous figure, I don't really remember what it was. And the judge says, how could you possibly do that? And Brother George says, well, the pay for the Franciscans isn't that good, but the benefits are out of this world. And the whole courtroom laughed. And it's true, when someone of great means gives it all up to follow Jesus, people pay attention. But in reality, all of us are called to really discover that the treasure of having a relationship with Jesus that changes your life and that you orient your entire life around that discovery is a rich and a treasure that nothing in this world can compare to. And we're all called to find that relationship. And the church has had the mission over 2,000 years of, just like Zacchaeus encountered Jesus, to bring Jesus to people so that they can recognize that great treasure and change their lives. We as the Franciscans do that. And many people, like Brother George, have left a lot to join us. And it seems like a great sacrifice, but the joy of serving the Lord with your life, and for all of us, not just Franciscans, is so great that it's greater than any material thing of this world. And what's more is every time you're working to preach the gospel or share Jesus with others and they convert, that joy in your heart is renewed all over again. And this is the greatest treasure in life, to bring Jesus to others. And so our Franciscan missionaries in Vietnam, I'm talking about today, and also in the United States, we are like the tree. And the church is like the tree that Zacchaeus climbed up. It's a way of allowing people to encounter Jesus, maybe get their head above the crowd in the everyday life, to see the world a little bit differently, and to see that great treasure of Jesus. And so, in Vietnam, we have had our mission for a little bit over 12 years now. The friars started working there. And I remember when I entered the order, I had another brother, Anthony, Pham, who now has passed away. He passed away in our novitiate from cancer. And his whole family was from Vietnam. And many of the family members have had cancer, and so we believe there's something that happened in the war, like the napalm or something like that.
Forgive me, a correction. It was actually several years after our novitiate that Brother Anthony did pass away. And in addition to being the inspiration for some of our first Vietnamese American vocations and friars to our conventual Franciscan Order, before he passed away, he was able to raise funds here in the United States to go back to North Vietnam to build a small little church. And it was finally dedicated after he died on the very first feast of St. Anthony. And it was that dedication and that church that became the seed of our order in Vietnam and our mission. Because many friars came in addition to the many people. And the friars saw the great devotion and love of the people and continued to go back. And that was the beginning of our Vietnam mission.
But he came to our order, and he was so on fire with preaching the gospel that he went throughout California and preached to many young people and ran a big youth group, but also inspired friars to join us. And so we started getting a handful of Vietnamese American friars whose families had fled Vietnam for political persecution, religious persecution, and seeking a better way of life. And they joined our order and became ordained priests. And then we were given custody of the mission in Vietnam. And so we took these handful of Vietnamese American priests and sent them back to Vietnam to really form our young men joining the order in Vietnam. Now, some of their families, like their parents who risked their lives, and they've lost family members in the boats and coming over from Vietnam, were a little bit afraid and not too happy with us when we sent their children back to Vietnam, because they said we struggled so much to bring them here. But by the grace of God, everything is fine. And now we have about 40 young men in Vietnam who are studying to be a priest. And we have not yet had our first ordination in Vietnam because you have to be approved by the government. And we just recently got approved. But Friar Paul is here with us. Are you here, Friar Paul? Can you stand up, please? He's from Vietnam. He's one of our first friars from Vietnam. And he's going to be ordained here in the United States as a deacon in February. But back in Vietnam, most of our young men who are still waiting to be ordained are either studying, some are finished their studies, but also very much involved in charity work. We have a leprosarium where leprosy in Vietnam is still prevalent, and an orphanage, because there's many families who have lost their parents, and so we raise a lot of the kids. Work in hospitals and in parishes and religious education. And so today, all of us are called to join in and share in the mission of the church. And the mission of the church is to bring people to an encounter with Jesus that changes their life, just like we've seen with Zacchaeus in the gospel. We can do that by sharing our faith with others, telling them about what Jesus has done for us. But we can also do that by sharing in the mission of the church with our prayers and our contributions. And so today, after communion, we're going to take up a second collection for the support of our Franciscan mission in Vietnam and ask for your help financially, but also, most importantly, your help with prayers and your help for young men called to serve as a Franciscan to join us. And I have information in the back of the church about our order. Thank you for your time, and God bless you.